Hello, Blue Jays fans, and welcome to episode 269 of the Jays from the Couch radio podcast, brought to you by jaysfromthecouch.com. We're happy you're joining us for another week of Blue Jays Talk as we stream live on Facebook and on YouTube and Twitter. We're everywhere. This episode goes live. Our podcast is live every Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, as well as our two other quality shows stream live. We've got the On-Fec Circle and Sunny Side of the Dome, Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and Thursday 6 p.m. Eastern Time, respectively. And if you missed this podcast live, first of all, shake your head. Second of all, you can find us anywhere you find your quality podcasts. Just look up Jays from the Couch. You'll find us, whether it's Apple, Google, Spotify, it doesn't matter. We're there. And I'm your host, as always, Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at JFtC. We've got a great episode for you this week, as usual. We're going to talk about the recent homestand. The Toronto Blue Jays were kind of a big thing over the last 11 games. We're going to look at the playoff picture, and by request, we're going to dive into who are the Blue Jays' rivals. We know who they used to be. We're going to take a look at right now. Who would we consider to be Blue Jays rivals? And to help me do, and we'll also have our stat of the week. Can't forget that. To help me do all of this, I've got Jays from the Couch regulars at this point. Can't do a podcast without them. Host of the On-Fec Circle, Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Steve Feck, good evening, sir.
Sean, how are you?
I could not be better. I couldn't. I gave up trying. This is it.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to spoil your mood by joining the podcast, but
that's quite all right. It's quite all right. I'm only allowed out for like half an hour a week, and this is it. So thanks.
Gotcha.
And host of the Sunny Side of the Dome, Thursdays, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, Karen Suter. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
And now, Let's start with our news segment here. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Kevin Biggio. Clearly, still not healthy. Might help explain his rather poor 2021 showing. He's back on the IL again with his neck and back, so hopefully he can get himself right and get back to, because it's got to be frustrating, right? If you're Kevin Biggio, you can't catch a break. First, they shift you over to a position that you could play, but you're not, major league ready at. And then, of course, he hurts himself. But anyway, so he's on the IL. But the bigger news is the Blue Jays came home, played 11 games, and kicked ass doing it. 9-2, including, if I'm not mistaken, and my buddies who are watching and listening, who are Red Sox fans, they'll know. They won't admit it, but they'll know that Toronto went 3 out of 4 against them, including the win with George Springer's 8th-inning home run, which was just about as exciting as any home run I've seen since Jose Bautista's in 2015. So here's the news part. And Karen, and I'm going to start with you, Karen. Before we went on air, you mentioned that the Major League Baseball power rankings came out, and the Blue Jays went 9-2, 3 of 4 from the Red Sox, and ended up finding themselves lower in the power rankings. Anyway, that aside, Karen, I guess my question is, first of all, how fun was the last, series and 11 games even? But not only that, but what does it mean moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and I'm not suggesting any kind of a perfect parallel, but I'm feeling very similarly to how I felt at this time back in 2015. I mean, they already had a really good core, but the team had some flaws, and they've gone out in season and done the best they can to plug all those holes. And it's to me, it looks like, Blue Jays 2.0, however you want to put it, it's a really new and improved version. And they just like teams that get into the playoffs, that go fairly deep into the playoffs, they have a lot of different ways that they can beat you. They have pitching. They have it. It seems like it's a different guy every night carrying the offense. And yeah, I mean the defenses look much better lately. Like they're practicing. They must be taking extra drills and yeah, because it's been so impressive, and I've been saying it all along, and I'm more convinced than ever. Playoffs this year. It's happening.
And Steve, I'm going to throw it to you here, but Karen, brings up a point about this 2015 feeling, and before we went on air, I told her that I refuse to let myself get caught up in that, because it does have that same feeling, the excitement of returning home and the trade deadline and playing so well. It does have that feeling ish. But for me, the difference between 2015 and this year is that 2015, it was literally Alex Anthopoulos pushing all the chips into the middle and saying, let her ride. It's just, this is it. Whereas I feel like the front office hasn't done that. And we've talked about on multiple shows, we've talked about how they've gone about the trade deadline. But for you, Steve, is there a parallel between the 2021 Blue Jays and the 2015 Blue Jays, and will it result in the postseason?
Well, I think there's a parallel as far as the level of excitement, not only among the fan base, but you look in that dugout, and it's party city. Every single game, even when they're down, they don't look down. And if you looked in the dugout, let's say in May or in June when they were really struggling, you didn't really see hanging heads, but you didn't exactly see, George Springer and Teoscar Hernandez, doing the cha-cha, whatever it is they're doing, after every home run or run scored in the dugout. The big difference for me is that when the Blue Jays started getting hot, no one really was keeping pace. The Blue Jays went 9-2, which is awesome. They brought the Red Sox back down to earth a little bit, but while they were going 9-2, the A's and Yankees were going 8-2. So you need to be excited. You need to be a lot more positive. But if you go 9-2 and not really make up much ground in the wild card race, I'm still holding back a little bit because that concerns me. I think this road trip is going to tell us a lot of things. If they dominate on this road trip, and given the competition, they could, then I think, okay, I'm going to have to come up with another public apology on the podcast and say, okay, the Blue Jays, I guess it's going to have to be, I'm sorry, Ross, or I'm sorry, Karen, or, because there's already like a feck silhouetted tumor growing in her head from having to listen to me the last 2 years, on this podcast. So I think if they really dominate on this road trip, then I think, yes, the Blue Jays they're going to make the playoffs. Right.
You're right. This coming road trip will be huge. And I might even agree with you, Steve, if this were 3 weeks from now. We're staring down the barrel of September, where time is kind of running out, right? I would feel that urgency a bit more. But I think I've got my feet in the Karen camp. Because I just feel like there is lots of time, and they only have 3 games to make up, right? Just to get into the playoffs. The Rays, I don't think will ever lose again. I don't know what they're doing, and but so the division, I'm not focused on. But I believe with 3 games and 7 weeks left in the season, I think it's very doable. But as you know, if this were the situation 3 or 4 weeks in the future, I might be as concerned as you. Yeah.
The only reason that I think that this particular road trip is as important as any group of series in the entire year is that I think the Blue Jays are already in opponents' heads. If they turn that magic of the return to Rogers Center and they keep it going on the road, I think there's a lot to say about psychological, not warfare, but how it plays on a team. And again, I'm old enough to remember, the El Foldos of the 69 Cubs and the 78 Red Sox. One series or one trip suddenly just changes the landscape, and then it just becomes a snowball rolling down the hill. So that's why I think this particular series, this road trip, is as important as any time in the 2021 season.
Right. And we get to see Blue Jays MVP candidate in Vladimir Guerrero Jr. go up against the Angels MVP candidate, and it is not Mike Trout, which in 2015 it was. That was the big, so very quickly, because, we've only got a set amount of time here. But Karen, I'm going to start with you. Ohtani versus Guerrero. First of all, who wins the battle this series, and who wins the battle at the end of the year?
Who wins the battle game-wise this series? The Blue Jays.
I meant between Ohtani and Guerrero.
Ohtani's scheduled to pitch on Thursday, so I envision him having a good game on Thursday. But it was like I said. I found it kind of cute. I don't know if you meant to do it, but you were talking about the Blue Jays catching magic when their next stop is Anaheim. So, but yeah, I think they're on a roll. I think they're going to keep rolling. Circle back your question about MVP. I think the Jays get to the playoffs, and I think Anaheim does not. And I think we're going to see another parallel with 2015 in that, Josh Donaldson had a fantastic year, and strictly by the numbers, Mike Trout was a little bit better, but Donaldson's team went to the playoffs and Trout's team went to the golf course. And Donaldson was your league MVP.
And this year, Vladdy may be on pace to surpass a lot of Donaldson's numbers. But Feck, very quickly, who wins this series and who wins the MVP race?
Yeah, well, I think Vladdy comes in and he's going to put on a show because I think he knows he's. I don't want to call him the dark horse, but what Ohtani is doing this year, it is truly historic. This is like Wilt Chamberlain scoring 100 points in a basketball game. Ohtani's doing those kind of things this year. And given the way that American media loves to latch on to something and just beat it to death, I think that Vladdy's in an uphill battle to win that MVP, even if the Jays go to the playoffs. Do I think he's the most valuable player to his team? Yes, I do. But what Ohtani's doing has never, ever been done in baseball. Right. So I think he's going to get rewarded for that, not necessarily based on what his performance is.
Fair enough. Okay. So let's get to the meat of this show. And we had a comment on our YouTube channel, which everybody should be subscribing to, so you can catch all of these shows, Karen's show and Steve's show and our podcast live, and you can share your comments and questions live on the show. But we did have a comment asking about who is the Blue Jays rival. Who would we consider to be the Blue Jays rival? And if you look back historically, the Seattle Mariners came into existence the same year. But it's tough to form a rivalry when there's so much distance, right? And then especially when the Detroit Tigers were so close and they were in the same division, right? So that was there, and even now, if you think about Blue Jays rivalries, the Tigers comes to mind. However, that hasn't really existed in a long time. Now, I say that from my home in Nova Scotia, in God's country here in Nova Scotia, but people who live along that, in Windsor and, the Detroit, Toronto area would probably maybe have a little bit of a disagreement with me. But now, who do they have? Who is their rival? Now, we know that if you look at ticket sales, you would think it's the Yankees and the Red Sox because you're paying through the roof. Whereas if the Twins come to town or somebody else, tickets are cheaper. But that doesn't make a rivalry. So at this point, and Karen, I'll start with you. Who do you see as the Blue Jays rivalry? A game where you got to watch it because it's going to be good. It's going to be a fight.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was a really interesting question that one listener posed, and it's definitely worth a discussion. The way I see it myself, and you sort of touched on it a bit, I think it's something that has been fluid throughout the Blue Jays history. And I'll be very honest, right here, right now, I'm not even sure if they have a rival per se. I mean, I do think, and I would have said the earliest one was the Detroit Tigers. Geographically, they're so close. They used to play in the same division. And, back in the 80s, when the Jays were just getting good and the Tigers won in 1984 and games going down to the wire, I think it was 1987 when Jays were trying to get into the playoffs. And anyway, so I mean, it would have been them, but now they don't play in the same division. So that means one series against each other, two series against each other a year, one at home, one on the road. And another thing about a rivalry to me is that you're both trying, two guys trying to get the same girl or whatever, that they're both in the hunt at the same time. I can't really think of the last time when both the Jays and the Tigers were good at the same time. I mean, right now, I look at the Tampa Bay Rays, but honestly, if that's a rivalry, it's a pretty one-sided one because no matter what, they seem to have the Jays number, and it's pretty frustrating if you're a Jays fan. I think, I mean, you look at the playoff years, but then, none of that was really sustained. Texas Rangers and this and that. I think the closest thing for me that they've had for a rival in a long time is the Baltimore Orioles. But even that, you're going back a few years. I'm thinking, 2014, the Blue Jays were in first place in the AL East for a lot of the season early on. Then they started to falter, but even when they did that, they were in one of the wild card spots. And then they really ran into some hard times later in the season, ended up missing the playoffs. Baltimore wins the division, and they clinch the division in Baltimore with the Blue Jays as the visitors. And you watch that game, and you watch the on-field celebration after the game. And as a Blue Jay fan, the best word I could use to describe that was hollow. Flash forward a year, and it's the Blue Jays clinching first place in Baltimore to a chorus of "Thank you, Alex." And to this day, I'm sure Jays or Orioles fans watching that must have been thinking, who the F is Alex? And then the very next year, the wild card game. So two fairly evenly matched teams, and either one really could have advanced. So I'd say for a few years there that they were kind of, it seemed like they might have been brewing a rivalry there, but then they haven't been good. They haven't been good since, and the Blue Jays managed to rebuild much more quickly. Thank goodness. So.
Yeah, and I think the Rangers rivalry is more with the fans in Toronto than it would be the players, right? Because I don't believe there's anybody left from those playoff years anyway.
No.
So it's certainly not the players, but the fans. Oh, the Texas Rangers! You just want to,
And
So
Norbert, he's with the Yankees now, so
which for Blue Jays fans, it just makes it like perfect, right? Because you hate the Yankees and you hate him, so it's just they might as well be together. So Steve, I mean, Karen's argument about this kind of the fluidity of rivalries with the Blue Jays, I think it kind of rings true. But do you have in mind a team that really you would consider to be a rival for the Blue Jays?
Again, I'm old enough to remember when it was the Tigers, and even for fans, the Twins, because you have Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit, where fans traveled from Canada down to watch the games. And really, rivalries are about fans. The players don't care. As long as their check clears at the end of the day, I don't really think they care who they're playing. But for me, and it's been reinforced with the Jays playing in Buffalo, it's the Yankees. And then even when they were playing in Dunedin, you had the Yankees and all these teams, and you had all the obnoxious Yankee fans there in Dunedin at a home game cheering for the Yankees. I think you can trace it back to 2015, but maybe more 2016, where the Jays sort of shut the Yankees up in 2016. And them having called Buffalo home, this is part of the Shapiro plan. Yes, he wants to be Canada's team, but he wants to kind of capture those border towns, sort of a War of 1812 now in 2021, get those border towns. And no, I was not covering the War of 1812. So don't put any smart Alec comments up. I just not covering the War of 1812.
You knew I was going there.
But yeah, right. So I try to end it right when I can. But I mean, I think that's really the rivalry now. I mean, it's Yankee broadcasts on the radio that go into Western New York. You can still pick up the Toronto radio, but I think now there are more people living in Western New York having had the Blue Jays as their home team the last 2 years. Now I think they're more open to stand up to the Yankee fans. I mean, Met fans to a degree, but that's a different league, except that those Yankee fans said, no, I'm a Blue Jay fan.
Right. No, that's very interesting, because I think everybody just kind of, hates the Yankees, except for Yankee fans. But I wonder in that scenario if it's a case of, like the high school, the popular kids, and then the unpopular kid was like, man, you were such a jerk, and I hated you in high school, and the popular guy was like, what? I don't even know who you are. You know what I mean? And I feel like New York is busy doing their thing, and I don't know if the rivalry kind of goes both ways, or if it's just yet another team that hates us kind of thing.
Well, again, and I base this on having lived in Western New York for 5 or 6 years, and they've been force-fed the Yankees. I don't know that they necessarily want to root for them, but they're force-fed. You want to listen to a baseball game? Well, the Yankees are on. Okay. And they don't really think of, tune in to 590 The Fan or whatever and get the game that way. They're local stations carrying the Yankee game. So I think that's really where that rivalry, Buffalo is sort of like the little brother that tries really, really hard, but it's just not nearly as popular as you were saying, like in high school with the girls or with the friends, not quite the athlete, whatever it would be. So I really think that over time, Western New York is going to become Blue Jays country, and you're going to have that heated rivalry among fans, sort of like Ohio, Michigan, and college in the States, or back in the days, they didn't play very often other than the Pearson Cup game, the Expos and the Blue Jays. There was a divide there. You were either a Blue Jay fan or an Expo fan. There weren't too many people that cheered for both. So
yeah. Yep. No, that's true. And coming from here down in Nova Scotia, again, you've got a lot of Red Sox fans. And I think it's proximity, right? At the time, it was either the Expos or the Red Sox. Of course, the Expos, aren't there anymore. And so a lot of people are Red Sox fans here, or Blue Jays fans. And then the sprinkling of, like, I had a student this year whose favorite team was the Diamondbacks. And I was like, you're 14. How do you, what connection do you have with a Major League Baseball team from Arizona? Anyway. And so I wonder, from my perspective, if there's a rivalry with the Boston Red Sox. I remember going to Boston and, with my son, and had him holding his little hand, walking with my wife, and I had my Blue Jays stuff on, and Buddy at the train station was like, that's brave. Like, I'm walking around in Blue Jays gear in Boston, and I was like, what's going to happen here? Security. So I wonder if there is a rivalry there, but at that game, the people in Boston and the fans there was no rivalry. They just loved their baseball. They loved their team, and if their team isn't in it, then they're just there for the fun of it, right? So back to the original question, other than the Detroit Tigers, I don't know if there is one team that you can point to say this is the Blue Jays' rival. I think it's by the day or year, so to speak. Yep. Mm-hmm. And to me, and I'm taking this a little further, but to me, that speaks to the disregard that Major League Baseball has for the Toronto Blue Jays. They would never disrupt the Yankees and Red Sox rivalry. They would never put them in separate divisions. And it's not just a geography thing. They would never do that, right? And yet they took the rivalry that was the Tigers and the Blue Jays, and they split it up. So that's an aside. And Karen and I were kind of talking about just how Major League Baseball views the Toronto Blue Jays anyway. And I wonder if getting rid of that rivalry has hurt the team, with the ticket sales or whatever have you, or television deals. I don't know. I would need to obviously look into that, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least, because that's what they do, right? Any last thoughts on the rivalry before we get into our stat of the week?
I think we've covered what it is.
Yeah, there's just no answer, and unfortunately, that's where we are. So we'll move into our stat of the week, and I suggested, so first we did home runs, then we did pitcher ERA, and so I thought we'd go back to hitting, and as an extension of the home run talk, we would talk about strikeouts. And then, of course, Karen said, well, pitcher strikeouts or hitter strikeouts. And then I said, well, you know what? Let's do both. Why not? Right? And here's why. Because I found a little bit of information that kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit. Okay, so when you're looking at the Toronto Blue Jays in 2021, Marcus Semien, I was surprised, but Marcus Semien leads all Blue Jay hitters with 111 strikeouts, and that is in 487 plate appearances. So,
what happened to you, Sean?
Where'd you go? Did Sean strike out?
Yeah, well, I guess so. I guess snuck that fastball down the middle and somebody knocked it out of the park. There he is.
Live TV here. So where did I go?
You tell us.
Well, I think Ross was trying to sabotage my feed, and it just got the wrong one. So I don't think it's you personally. I think it's just the Ross is still gunning for me despite the apology. So
come on, Ross. I've always supported you. Anyway, I don't know where I was booted out, so I'll just go back. Marcus Semien leads the Blue Jays, 111 strikeouts. I found that surprising. The other thing that I find surprising is when you look at the pitching side, that there's only one pitcher who has more strikeouts than Marcus Semien has collected, and that's Robbie Ray with 156. And so here we have this, the Blue Jays are not really a strikeout team. They've got Robbie Ray, and Ryu, I think, has 99 strikeouts. But they are a strikeout offense. You know, when you look at, and I think it is surprising that Marcus Semien has struck out so much. But I guess the question here is, can you talk about strikeouts from just one side? Because I think that from the hit perspective, people are willing to take on strikeouts in lieu of, or not in lieu of, but they're willing to accept strikeouts if they come along with the home runs. And on the pitching side, you know, you're getting more strikeouts, right? So you kind of have one side saying it's okay, and the other one is collecting all of what you've thrown out, right? Those strikeouts. So let's talk about offense first. Karen, where are you on this strikeout mentality that has changed in baseball, where we just accept a guy striking out 150, 200 times a year?
Yeah, I mean, so much of this modern day baseball philosophy, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And, you know, because to me, I look at on base percentage, I look at putting the ball in play. And, you know, if you're a hitter, nothing good comes of you striking out. So I guess I'm just kind of used to thinking of it that way. But yeah, I mean, the way many people view the game has changed, that, you know, strikeouts are more accepted as long as they come with your share of extra base hits, in particular the home run and all that. And I mean, the Jays have managed, they're up there. They're one of the biggest overall run scoring teams in Major League Baseball. So in spite of the strikeouts, they're still finding ways to score. So
right, and kind of proving the point, right? That as long as you score runs, the strikeouts are acceptable. So Steve, I want to ask you, because obviously, you know, you were around when the game was called rounders, and so
yes.
So I just wonder, are you seeing the change? And I wonder if if something that you kind of cringe about, or if you're kind of in the same camp.
I cringe about it because of what created the environment where strikeouts were okay. You know, the whole launch angle, analytics, weighted, expected, whatever. I cringe at that. But that being said, you and Karen both made the point. How many home runs does Marcus Semien have? How many RBIs does he have? How many runs has he scored? How many games does he help win? If that's all happening, I mean, that's fine. You know, I mean, as a kid growing up in New York, I wasn't a Mets fan, but there was Dave Kingman, who struck out. I don't know how he did not strike out 300 times a year, because I swear to God, every time I watched him, he struck out 4 times every single game, and he was their starting left fielder. So I don't know how he wasn't that record, but he also hit 30, 35 home runs in an era where you weren't getting that many home runs. So, and Rob Deere, you know, he struck out on the on-deck circle. He struck out before he even got up to the plate. He was already struck out, you know, but he had a couple of big home run seasons, driving in a lot of runs. So that ultimately is it's the back of the baseball card, bottom line. Okay. If those runs are being scored and your team's winning, okay. But as a game-wide thing, I think it's a bigger problem. But we're only talking about the Blue Jays, so I don't care if everybody strikes out 3 times. If on their 4th at bat, they're driving in a run or getting on base or getting a big hit, that's fine.
Right. And, you know, I mean, you talk about analytics, and arguably the the team that uses analytics the most, the Tampa Bay Rays, I believe, and I'd have to double check, but I'm afraid to touch anything on this computer, but I believe the Rays lead the league in strikeouts.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, analytics says it's okay. And if it's working for the Rays, then, but what gets me is it feels like a wasted at bat. You know, like it's literally the all or nothing situation, the hit it over the fence or just go back and sit down. And that is where I'm having a hard time with it, right? I would rather see put together a good at bat, a solid at bat. If you end up striking out, okay, so be it. Because strikeouts happen with an umpire makes a bad call or whatever, right? That happens. But don't just, if you're striking out because you're okay with striking out, that to me is a problem, right? You like go up there, work it, and put together a solid at bat. And if the outcome is a strikeout, okay, I can live with those. I can't live with 4 of them every game. You know, like that's, but, or if you're striking out like Kevin Pillar and swinging in another area code, you know, that is a problem, right? So, but what's interesting though is the flip side of it is that as if you're pitching, you want to see that. You know, you want to see guys swinging for the fences and just missing and popping up or putting weak contact or whatever have you and racking up those strikeouts, right? Go ahead, Steve.
Right. But and what has Major League Baseball done to pitchers? It's taken away a tool. Now, okay. Now the guys that are globbing it on like cream cheese on a bagel, okay, they've gone a little too far with the stick and all that kind of stuff, and finding these industrial solvents that they put on their hand, and they can't wash off until like November or December. Okay, that's too much. But you know, you're taking away the weapon that a pitcher uses in this, and you know, it to try to get a batter out. So from that standpoint, you know, Major League Baseball is contributing to this, but my big concern is, and I've been watching the Cal Ripken, like not quite Little League, it's like another type of Little League. And this weekend I'll be down working the Pony League World Series here in Southwestern PA. And I know what I'm going to see. I'm going to see all these kids striking out because they're trying to go with the launch angle and they're trying to emulate what they're seeing on TV. Eventually, that's going to erode the caliber of talent that's coming up from the little leagues up through high school, up through college. That's my major problem with strikeouts.
Right. Yeah. Little kids are coming up and falling in love with the home run, right? And the more we celebrate home runs and the home run celebrations, it kind of perpetuates that as well, right? So I totally get where you're coming from. But if I'm a pitcher, I'm loving it, right? You might hit me once in a game in 4 at-bats, but you're striking out the 3 other times. I don't know. It's a free out. I'll take it. Right? Anyway, it's just interesting to me how the game keeps changing. And then, Steve, you bring up a good point that Major League Baseball keeps continuing to try and figure out how to get more offense even. You know, as if launch angles and whatnot and exit velocity isn't enough. They're trying to figure out how to get more offense. And meanwhile, pitchers are like, oh, come on, I'm never going to make $20 million a season because my ERA will be 7, which is not unintentional, by the way.
No, sure, right.
That's a whole other issue. Major League Baseball trying to keep salaries down, but
and relief pitcher salaries down because generally the more dominant relievers and more effective relievers have the higher strikeout per 9-inning ratios. Mm-hmm. So, right, it is a way to control salaries, and then they can go to arbitration and turn around and say, yeah, but you struck out 168 times.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's fascinating. Anyway, I heard the phone ringing. I guess Ross Atkins is not satisfied with trying to sabotage the show. He's trying to get one of us. So we might as well get out of here before he finds us. Steve, let everybody know how they can follow you and catch your show, and then what's on tap for tomorrow.
Okay. Well, we're going to do the show on Wednesday. Because the first game of the doubleheader starts at 6 p.m. Eastern time, which is the usual start time, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. And God forbid a podcast infringe on Major League Baseball's, starting time. And in the case of the Blue Jays Rogers thing, we don't want, I don't know what they're going to do. Not that they can't go to Bob Ritchie articles or other Jays from the Couch articles and use that information, in the pregame and in-game interviews. I don't know what they're going to do. I think they're going to be lost. But this week, it's Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Yes, that cheap shot brought to you by the Feckless Wonder. And we're going to talk about, I always do a Blue Jays Way segment, which is kind of like culture, history, a little mixed in. We're going to talk extensively about Buck Martinez.
Yeah. I wish you all the best. I can't wait to work the controls on that. So there should be lots of opinion and commentary coming through, so I'll be happy to work the screen and fire those comments and stuff on as well. So make sure, if you're listening, make sure Wednesday 6 p.m. Eastern time, catch the On Fact Circle. It's going to be good. And Karen, your turn. What do we got going on this week on the sunny side of the dome?
Yeah, lots of good stuff to talk about. So tune in Thursday 6 p.m. Jays are doing great. They had a 9-2 homestand. They're on the road, and I'm expecting them to do very well. And look at Mr. Jordan Springer making up for lost time with back-to-back AL Player of the Week awards, and just keeps on rolling. So tune on in. If you have any questions, comments, send them all in. I love that interaction, and hope to see you there.
That's right. Lots of sunshine. So these days in Blue Jays land. All right. Well, thank you both so much for joining me this week. We went a little long this week, but it was a great conversation as always. Deeply appreciated. Thank you to both of you. And to our viewers tuning in live, whether it was Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, we do appreciate it. Thank you so much. And don't forget, when you're watching, you can share your comments and questions live, and we'll address them directly on the broadcast. If you miss it, of course, don't worry. It's okay. Our podcast is available anywhere you find good podcasts, Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, you'll find Jays from the Couch. Make sure you head to jaysfromthecouch.com for lots of great writing, lots of great content there, and you never know when some of it may appear on your television screen by another outlet. Who knows? But that's another story. Anyway, so for Steve, for Karen, for Ross Atkins, who's been trying to get a hold of us, this is Sean Doyle. You can follow me on Twitter at DoyleJFtC. Hope and life gives you a juicy fastball down the middle, and you don't miss it. Take care.